Guys, in case you guys don't know, I hope you guys know. Let me scoot all the way over here. This is SB Spirito. All right, you want to introduce yourself, mate, so that others who don't know you can actually know you a little bit more?
Um, I honestly feel I'm like the least known content creator out there, but apparently I am very known. So, I think the best way to know me is that I cover a lot of news analysis stuff on very much power fantasies and isekais. That's what I've definitely been known for, covering that heavy kind of stuff, especially some raunchy stuff like High School DxD and Data Live as well. So that's what a lot of people know me for.
For the raunchy stuff? Hey, yo. I mean, it is what it is, right? So,
It is.
I kind of want to start off by asking you, man, like, what got you into creating content genuinely?
It was kind of interesting because I wanted to just make content in general, and my friend was kind of always arguing with me. He's like, "Oh, you should do like gaming and stuff," and I'm like, "Why gaming?" He's like, "Oh, well, Jacksepticeye is really big, so that's the only way you'll get big." But I'm like, "That's boring. Everyone does that. Oh, I want to do something fun, different, interesting." But I also wanted to talk about something that I was generally really passionate about, and they were nowhere near into anime as much as me. Like I'd be constantly recommending animes. They'd be like, "Ah, nah, nah, I might watch that in like 6 years or something," which is the general case. I generally recommend Overlord. 6 years later, my friend finally watches it, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is amazing!" I'm like, "Well, why didn't you watch it when I first bloody recommended you, little twat?" But I just kind of wanted to just talk about like anime stuff, but he wanted me to do more gaming stuff. So I tried visual novels. That didn't really work very well. I'm not very good at playing games and what like videoing myself because I'm just like monotone expression. I'm just like,
The entire time?
this good
But,
game. So when it comes to like anime, I can be a lot more expressive, discussional. I like really heavy discussion topics, like real analytical kind of stuff. That's why I really got into like Overlord, Dark Marchy, Shield Hero, Emmett's Shadow, and then of course Jobless Reincarnation, because Jobless Reincarnation is just like millions of flawed characters with so many different layers to them.
right.
And Rudy's just like the like just the cherry on top. Like the real good stuff is that you got Paul, Zenith, all of them. They're all just so flawed and broken in their own ways. But it reminds me of the imperfections of human nature and how relationships are built and broken, and the way arguments can start over the dumbest of things. And it proved it, especially with like Paul and Rudy's, and that's what got me really hooked. Was those like people were like, "Oh my god, Paul's evil," and it's like, well, no, because Paul sees it from his own perspective. He sees it as Rudy's being lazy, and Rudy sees it from his own perspective. So you see how human nature is that you see it from your own perspective on that sort of line or a wall, and then
Right.
once you break it all down and you understand each side, you're like, oh, I get it now, and that's when people start to be able to communicate better, and that's what I loved about those kind of series because it felt more grounded in the human nature. Like the fantasy stuff is like, yeah, that's not realistic, but the human nature was what really got me in, and that's why I loved talking about that kind of stuff.
So,
And then all the high school DxD stuff, that's just like the fun raunchy stuff. You want to see some good stuff. So that's when I kind of got into the data live that high school
so
DxD because I need some fan service to keep me going.
So I love the fact that you bring up sort of the analysis aspect of these shows, because oftentimes I feel as though, let's be honest, we've been baited into some Twitter post lately, right, to go ahead
Yeah,
into going ahead and responding. But oftentimes I feel as though like most individuals watch a show and it's like they're the main character, right? Or they project a lot of themselves into the main character rather than taking like a multifaceted view and seeing, for example, Paul's perspective or Zenith's perspective or some of the other characters. I'm using Mushoku Tensei as a reference just because it's easier. Some of the other characters' perspectives at play to try and understand the overall concept of the story. So, how do you view that as well for like a general, say, anime only individual out there?
I mean, I always recommend light novels over animes just because you always get those finer details. But I feel like the anime is really good in those sense because it does bring out a lot of the interesting character, the emotions. Because when you read something, you don't always get to see the emotions, and if an anime is done well, you get to see the emotions, the heartbreaks, and especially, I think the Paul Rudy fight was one thing that really got a lot of people hooked, and it really started a lot of analysis stuff.
Right.
And I do feel like there isn't as many analysis type channels out there that really get into those kind of psychological relationships as I would hope. That's why I do enjoy them. Like Natalia does it quite often as well, but she does it from the point of view of like a writer, while I do it from the point of view of like a hardcore gamer when I talk about all these fantasy worlds. And
Right.
for you, you can talk about it from a psychologist point of view. So it's really awesome that there are different perspectives on how you can see a story.
Well, what I find interesting is when it comes to like our, I guess, general perspectives of certain characters, and this is something that I thought for some reason, and this is just me and my own implicit bias, right? That for some reason we would all have different takes, right? But the more that I realized and I like looked into some of our takes and some of our respondings to some of the bait that was thrown out there, we had very similar takes, at least on that one like aspect where we're like, wait a minute, you're looking at this wrong. And we all come from different perspectives in our own little field. So I thought that was absolutely wonderful just to see everyone just stepping in. So okay, I'm going to ask you a hard question. I'm just going to jump in here, and this is a baited question because this is one that we got baited into. So I'm going to go ahead and ask it the same way that it was asked to us. Is Rudy a pedophile? Is that the whole point of Moshiko Tensei?
Oh, that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to be cancelled. I've always wanted to experience that. So I'm going to say no.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Hot take. Hot take.
Yeah, hot take. I mean, the thing is that, and this is one of the big flaws that people have when they try and attack the series. It's like it's a fantasy world. So yes, the human nature, I really like that because it's realistic and grounded. But the fantasy aspect is completely like out there. It's not real because it's a reincarnation. He's been hit by a truck. He's reincarnated, and he's rebirthed. Like that doesn't happen to us. It's not like I'm going to get rebirthed next week and be able to live my life out. And we've got this kind of construct of how we see society based on rebirth. It's meant to be like a really weird foreign thing in a fantasy world. Well, it gets done quite a lot, but I just feel like it's hard to sit there and equate mental. At least in my experience in life, I've learned that just because you're physically older doesn't make you mentally more mature. I've learned that over the years with many friends and family members and just people that I've met, is that I've met old people that are not very mature, and I kind of just sit there and go, yes, you might be in the body of a 30 to 40-year-old, but you've got the mental capacity of a 12-year-old.
Right.
So I kind of feel like I apply that same mindset to Rudy as well, that yes, he may have physically been a certain age when he died and now he's been rebirthed, so people like to play that tally game, but mentally he was extremely progressed. He shut himself off. He never gained any life experiences beyond what he had from high school, and then he shut himself off. So he's like almost like in a time bubble in a sense. So for me, mentally, I just see him as a child being reborn as a child and being given a second chance to actually finally experience what life should be like for him. And I don't think there was any flaws of his parents. His parents in his past life tried the best they could, but it just didn't work. But as far as the physical aspect goes, it's like it's a fantasy world where he's reborn. So I'm just like, you can't apply that. But I always see people argue like, oh, he groomed 3 children, and I'm like, you do know Roxy's like 40 plus years old, right?
Right.
Like people suddenly use, oh well, Rudy, Roxy looks young, so she must be young. But then I'm like, but can't you just then apply that same logic to Rudy? Oh no, he's mental age. It's like, so you apply physical age when it suits you, then mental age when it suits you. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
So I'll go ahead and double down with this because I agree with you on this. I 100% agree with you on this because even in therapy, through a therapeutic perspective, I bring this up a lot. There are cases of individuals who come through who say that spiritually they might be another age, but there's no way to prove that. Right? There's no way that we can go ahead and examine the soul. So the only thing we can go off of is developmental brain age, right? And if you isolate yourself, if you completely isolate yourself off of society and you're not gaining any new experiences, making attachments or anything like that, you're not forming any new dendrites in your brains. Your neurons are not making new neural connections. So you're literally staying at that mental age of wherever you stopped growing, especially if you're a young kid. So my thing is, he gets reincarnated. He comes into a new body. He has a new baby brain, which is why he falls asleep and he cries and he pees himself or wets himself and then starts crying because he wet himself and this whole thing. It's that brain capacity for emotions and inner thought that's still labels him as a kid. He's not a full on adult as people like to say it. But and I'll make this argument. Have you seen ReZero? I'm assuming you have because I saw like
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So just wanted to make sure with this one because I feel as though Rudy gets a lot of flack because of Eartheus. Being 100% with you, I feel as though because Eartheus is not this fantastically well-groomed, handsome individual the way that most isekais start off with, because he's like, a loner that's kind of creepy, that's, the guy that nobody really wants to be around and gets reincarnated, there's issues. Because if we're looking at the mental age, let's look at Subaru and Emilia, with Emilia's mental age sort of innocence. We'll go ahead and
I
say
was just
innocence.
thinking that when you were talking about it, I was like, there is ReZero with Amelia and how she kind of went that time sort of diamond thing, and then even though physically she was younger, but physically and mentally she's still young, but people could kind of say, well, she's much older because of that whole time lapse thing.
Exactly. So that's why I'm throwing that at you. Like, how do you feel about, equating those or about those scenarios?
I mean, I can see what they're trying to do. I just really disagree with it. And I think a lot of that comes down to my own life experiences when it comes to, like, as I said, like,
Right.
I've met many older people physically, but mentally, it's like I'm talking like to a preschooler. And it's
R-
just like difficult to hold a conversation because you're like, oh, we're around the same age, but it's like I'm talking to a child. And I've learned over the years that yeah, physical age doesn't equal mental age. And I feel like with Rudy, the moment he closed himself off of the real world, he basically put himself in a bubble and he just stopped maturing. He just became, if anything, he probably deprogressed, I think if that's the word,
yeah.
kind of went backwards in his mental age and just became more childlike and like just closed off. And that's one of the issues that he does have when he goes into his new life, is that some of those issues do crop up. And that's particularly going to be a season 2 topic, because that is something that will continue to haunt him until he grows as an individual. And I think that's what's important about the journey for Joel's reincarnation.
Right.
Yes, he's got his flaws, he's got his mistakes, and yes, they do hold him back a bit, but it's all about how he grows and builds on that and becomes a functioning, like, civil human that can interact with other people in a meaningful way.
Straight up, regression is one of the most common defense mechanisms and coping skills that people, or coping mechanisms that people use. And that's absolutely true. If you go through a trauma the way that he's gone through, a sexual trauma at that, being shamed, and all of these things, what do people do? They regress and they often try to repress those emotions, and it comes out in deviant ways. That's just psychologically speaking. It's one of the most common things. So I want to jump into something of like your content creation. How do you pick what you're going to go ahead and like make a video on, and like what does that process entail for you, man?
A lot of the times I make the video based on the idea that I come up with on the day. Like, he will literally be like, I just sit there and I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea, and I just make it on the day and then I upload it, which can be kind of a pain because if you don't have a good idea for the day, you're kind of like sitting there going, and then you're kind of scrapping for ideas, and then sometimes you just don't really come up with the best ideas on the day. So I do try to pre-plan some of my ideas, write them down on paper, which has worked a little bit better for the second channel. But even
Right.
for the main channel, a lot of the time it's just like, oh, something cropped up, want to talk about it, and then I talk about it. Especially recently with the whole trailer for Jobs Reincarnation, there's been some interesting topics to discuss about, because the discussions you can see in comment sections can bring up some good topics. So it's very much spar of the time, but then sometimes I can come up ahead of time. I try to plan ahead based on the seasons as well now as well, because there's some good animes that come out each season, so it's nice to prepare ahead of time and read some of the source material.
Right. And with that, I guess being experienced with anime and with games and stuff, I'm assuming that you're pretty good at picking up some tropes on some of the shows as you're watching them or
Oh,
experiencing them. So for you, how easy is it for you to like start planning ahead? And this is just from an insight sort of view. Like you start seeing sort of a trope being laid out and you're like, oh wait, I already know where this is going. Like, how easy is it for you to relate to some of these characters or know their journey that they're taking based on some of the tropes that you've already seen?
some of them are very easy to predict, especially in rom-com romances, because I do watch a lot of those, and those are pretty easy to predict because you've always got your flat chest, your big boob, your tsundere, all
Yeah.
those kinds, and it's just like, okay, We know which one, where we know where these stories are going. And then there's also the childhood friend, which childhood friends never win in romances unless it's specifically stated on the title of the series. And it's like, yes, the childhood friend will definitely win. And then there's like some hook on it. Like there's one light novel series, it's like where the childhood friend will win, and all his female friends are all childhood friends. So of course one of them is going to win because they're all his childhood friends. So it's like,
Oh God.
there's always a catch. So anime itself can be very predictable. The counter that, every single Western movie I've watched, I've predicted. Like I just recently watched the D&D movie River Friend, and I predicted the entire movie from start to finish. I was like, yep, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, that's exactly how it's going to happen. I was like, so it's more just a preference of what do I enjoy more.
Right. And through that, I guess here comes my next one, right? Which is, if stuff becomes so predictable, how do you keep it interesting for yourself?
Fan service.
Fair. You broke me, no.
I mean, fan service is actually a legitimate answer in a sense, because I mean, if it's predictable, you might as well give me some good eye candy. But that also being said, even though a lot of it can be predictable, there are some series out there where they do try and do something different. And it's definitely one of those where it's a rare occasion. And when it is, it's a bit of a gem. Like Emmets in the Shadow was recent. And even though some of that was predictable in some of the tropes, what it tried to do was quite unique in the sense that it tried to be almost like a satirical version of like an overpowered protagonist isekai with mental issues, where he's like banging his head on a tree trying to gain power in his previous life and then gets hit by a truck. Those are the kind of ones that I do really enjoy, but even then I still do like my predictable ones, because I think I've probably become a little bit numb to it, especially with like live action TV shows and all that kind of stuff in the West. A lot of it's very predictable, so I've just kind of gone, as long as it's got good eye candy, the characters are fun and energetic, I can watch something that's kind of similar.
Right. So I'm so glad you brought up Eminence in the Shadow real quick, because honestly, I came into Eminence thinking, oh, it's just going to be another overpowered like isekai thing. And the next thing I know, I'm like, this is like The Room. This is one of those movies, like, you know, one of those shows that you go in and you think, oh, it's going to be bad, but it acknowledges what's happening and you're just like in for the ride with Lord Shadow here. So for you, I guess, watching Eminence in the Shadow, right? Were there any elements that actually surprised you about the show?
I wouldn't say so much surprised, but pleasantly enjoying it as the journey goes on, because of the fact that, like, I mean, yeah, I knew it was going to be really over the top outlandish, but it was more enjoying it for what it was. It's like, yes, you know what the journey is going to be, but seeing it was kind of the thing. It's like a roller coaster. Even though you know what's going to happen, you can see it go up and down. It was more the exhilarating fun of watching it play out and being part of that journey that I really did enjoy, because even though you know he's just going to completely ruffle stomp everyone, seeing the expressions in the way he voices it, especially when he's like, I am atomic. It's just so much fun, because you're just like, yeah, this is poking so much fun at like the overpowered protagonist, which those do get really boring, because there's a lot of isekais where it's just like, and I mentioned this on Twitter when arguing against someone that was complaining about jobless reincarnation, was no one seems to ever complain about the 101 million isekais where a 30 to 40-year-old office worker gets reincarnated as a 15-year-old, picks up 6 other girls at 15 years old, marries them all, and then runs off, and no one complains about that. And that's like the most common isekai trope out there. It's predictable as it comes. But then you've got things like Overlord, Tanya, Jobless, Eminence. Dharmachi's not an isekai, but it is a real good power fantasy that kind of fits nicely in those areas too. But they all kind of do their own unique thing.
Well, for me, listening into this, it's interesting how, in general, right, it's like a pick and choose battle, especially when it comes to sort of the, I guess, the knowledge base or the attack base for a lot of people. Because oftentimes what I find in situations like this, and I'm not sure if you ran into this, which is people will hide under the veil of an attack to divide certain communities. So for example, ReZero and Moshko Tensei are some of the most common ones that I've seen people just start shooting stuff at, like, because these two are isekais, because even though the best friends, like the authors might be best friends, you often get stuff where they're shooting stuff at one another, like mean comments, mean-spirited comments, mean tweets, all of these things, calling each other trash, whatever it may be. but the whole purpose is like it serves nothing other than division, other than like looking at like smartphone isekai. Sorry, smartphone isekai, but according to everyone on like a majority of people, kind of the regular isekai trope, you know, where no one's really calling stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, if people enjoy a smartphone isekai, I'm like, knock yourself out. It's not
Right.
like it's a bad series, but it's one of those where it's a very regular trope. I see it a lot where it's 30 to 40-year-old office worker transported, different age, picks up heaps of young girls. But the same people that are complaining about jobless reincarnation, I've never seen complain about these until after you point it out and they go, oh, well, I do have a problem with those. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you point that out? Oh, well, it's not popular. It's like, and one comment I saw as a counterpoint, they were like, "Oh, but Jobless Reincarnation is a really popular series." I'm like, "You're not part of the anime industry, or part of the anime community, because Jobless Reincarnation, yes, is popular in its own echo chamber. It's not popular in the entire anime community. If you want to talk about popular, you go One Piece,
Yeah.
Demon Slayer, My Hero Academia. Then you're talking popular. But when someone says Jobless Reincarnation is popular, I laugh because I'm like, no, it's not really. It is in its own circle, but it's not in the bigger grand scheme. So I feel like Jobless gets most of the hate because it's very, very easy bait because the writer deliberately made the main protagonist as kind of as scummy as you can in the sort of first part of the story, which is, of course, in his previous life. While the others, they're generally just seen as copy paste office workers. They've got a blank face, blank lifestyle, and then they're transported. So there's nothing really critique. It's just like they live a normal mundane life. While Rudy had a little bit more pointed out that he was not exactly a perfect individual. So it's an
Right.
easier thing to kind of critique and then ignore the rest.
So with that, I kind of want to ask you, you know, how do you feel in general about content creators who, because they come and go in waves, and even in my small time on YouTube and on Twitch, I've experienced this a dozen where, you know, Bochi was a big rave for a little bit, you know, and people were all on board for Bochi and a lot of anime. And next thing you know, they're milking the series is over, and they're like, I hated that show. And you get like this big, I'm not sure if you've experienced it or you've seen it, where it's like a big reversal on like the communities because they're heading towards another content or something like that.
Oh yeah, I see it quite a lot. It's like a wave in an ocean. It's a constant reoccurring thing. It comes in different shapes and sizes, but every anime season there's always one super hyped anime, and then it gets a bunch of hate. Or if it's really popular at the start, then it gets hated at the end. I mean, I remember way back, No Game No Life was beloved by certain content creators out there. Like it was worshipped, and now those very same content creators bash on it. SEO kind of reminds me of the same as well. A lot of people loved it back then. Then it became sort of the beloved hated series, and then it's kind of become beloved again. I do find the anime community to be really annoying when it comes to those kind of things because it's just like it feels like a lot of people don't really have an opinion themselves. They kind of just go, oh, what's the general consensus? I'll base my opinion on that and then roll with that. And I'm just like, you shouldn't be afraid to say your own opinion and it
Right.
be different than other people. But I mean, I understand that people like to conform to what a herd mentality is, but it's just kind of sad to see that, especially with good animes out there that are good in general, but get severely overhyped and then get a lot of hate, unnecessary hate, just because a bunch of fans way overhype something. And it happens every season. And it's very destructive of the community because then they turn on each other. I remember Slime and Spider, when Slime season 2 came out and Spider came out for the first time. And the communities were just attacking each other, was slandering each other, but the writers were best friends and they were collaborating, but the communities hated each other. And I'm just like, they're both identically, well, they're not identically the same, but the concept, the core concepts were the same. And then, of course, when you point that out, they start nitpicking, well, this is different. And it's like, yes, but the core concept is the same. It's an isekai, it's
Right.
power fantasy, it's overpowered protagonist. It's just a fun joy. Like, why are you both attacking each other? It just, to me, it just seems stupid and fruitless.
Right. Well, my own personal opinion on this is I find it interesting because you start to see the genuine divide between people that are there for a community building purpose versus people that are there for clout, right? Because it's like you have some people that are clout demons. I hate to put it this way, Uh, but legit, they'll go ahead and like instead of being genuine and offering interaction and trying to like get to know other content creators or their community that is out there, it's just okay. This anime is bringing the most clout. Let's say Demon Slayer, right? I'm gonna jump in when it's super duper popular, and then dip out when it's not, and bash it if that's where everything's going, and jump into another community, and it's a dip and go scenario. Because for me, it makes and then this is sort of where my next question is leading. It makes it interesting to see people jump back and forth like this because I'm wondering, do they stand for something as a creator, as an individual, or are they just going with the flow of things to ride sort of the waves, as opposed to say one day another fellow content creator being on the shit end of the stick, like them targeting another content creator out there because of that wave?
Yeah, it's the right question to ask. The answer that don't have because I just don't really understand the community some days. But it does kind of break my heart seeing the community act in that way because it just creates a giant like it just feels like little islands of communities, and whenever there's like when those islands kind of come close to each other, they start attacking each other and throwing stuff at each other, and it just and then you've got people that aren't even part of the anime community just attacking the anime community in general, and it's where those islands should come together and stand
Right.
as one to be against those that are just like going, oh, well, anime is for the p word and all that, and it's like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those moments where we should be coming together and being like, yeah, anime's for everyone. We can all enjoy it. You don't have to like the same show. There's one thing I've learned over the years as a content creator. I see a lot in the comment section where people will say, well, this is trash. How dare you like it?
Yeah.
I still remember one comment a long time ago. I was just reporting on Overlord season 4 news, and a guy sent me like a 2-page comment about how trash the anime was. And it wasn't one of those like, it's just a simple opinion, I don't like it. No, it was a, how dare you like it? Passive aggressive, you are beneath the ground. You are a simpleton because you like the anime. I was just like, that's not helpful, right? And then they're just like, oh, well, you should learn to accept my opinion. I'm like, you're not giving an opinion, you're telling people what to think and then belittling them for thinking the opposite. I was like,
Right.
that's not helping. You're just turning people against you, and it creates more divisiveness and animosity and pettiness. And I feel like that's what some of the parts of the anime community are becoming. And even though I think that's more the loud, like it's like the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing, it's not the
Right.
entire community. It's what's being heard because it's the loudest part of the community that's being echoed throughout, and it's given a bad image.
So with that, you and I find this awesome because you're hitting a lot of major points that like I was like, okay, if we touch on this subject or we get close to it, I think that this is an awesome way to get into it. I love the fact, first off, I got to give you applause, dude. Thanks so much for being so vulnerable and open with scheduling and all of that. Got to give you that, dude, because you've been on it. You're like on it, and I appreciate you so much, legitimately, SB. But through that, I kind of want to go ahead and jump into this and ask you because I think as content creators, I'm sure we've received a lot of praise, but we also receive a lot of flack. And my question for you is, has there ever been a comment? Because I feel like that's affected you in like a negative way that you were like, that you really took it in. And I also want to state this, guys, in case I want to just preface this by saying, yeah, we are content creators, but we are humans first. We are people and we still feel emotions and all of that. So I'll leave that to you, SB.
I think what I will do is I will dig my own grave first because I kind of want to give an example of a perspective of a non-content creator. Because at one
Sure.
point I wasn't a content creator, and I'll use an example of Chibi Reviews because he was one of the first channels I ever subbed to. My respect for him grew as a content creator, and the reason being is once you become a content creator, and this is for all people watching and aren't content creators, seeing what content creators are from an outside perspective is very different from what we experience. And that was something that I learned the harsh way because I always kind of looked at what Chibi did, like his titles, his thumbnails, how he spoke, and his opinions. I was like, oh, I kind of was always very critical of it. I was kind of very petty. And then as I kind of became a content creator, I learned and understood that mm, there's a lot of things you learn very quickly, especially with some of the comments. And I realized that, and even for him, he takes it on like a champ. And I had to learn very quickly because when I got into it, I was very blissful. I was like, oh, this is easy. I can read all my comments and interact with all the communities, join all the different discords. And then as the years went on, I learned just how vicious people can be towards you. I
Yeah.
think the one that stuck out the most was the spider community. It was the so I'm reincarnated as a spider, so what? I think is how you say it.
Uh-huh.
And I was making light novel reviews on it, and there was a particular character, which is the elf leader, and I always believed he was a very well written villain, but I always called him a douche canal because he was a douche. He treated people like garbage, but I always referred to him as that. But then people would start attacking me, going, "Oh, but he's a well written character." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm saying that in the video. I'm just saying he's a douche because he is.
Right.
He's a douche." And they were like getting angry, thinking that I was attacking the series. And so they would go to the Discord, they would lie about what I said, they would twist my words. Then some of them would read those comments in the Discord, go to my comment section, attack me. And I call them hit and run comments where they would just make the comment and they'll never come back to reply after I've countered it. And it was just like, it wasn't just one comment, it was the constant barrage from the community. And even the moderators on the Discord was just sitting there going, "What are your problem, kids?" Like, and I just ended up stopped reading. I just completely stopped, and they were begging content creators to cover Spider, but people were just not bothering because they were so toxic. And it's
Right.
not just one community; like there are many like that. But that was the one where I was first ever like, "Nah, I'm done. I'm not going to put up with this shit anymore." I'm like, over.
Right. And honestly, good for you for putting up your boundaries, because it, like, again, people don't seem to think that comments affects us, but it does. And especially if it starts taking a big impact in our social life and discords and our comment sections and stuff like that. I'll share one of mine. Oftentimes, like, I always title my stuff as like, well, first and foremost, I am a psychologist. Like, that's my full-time job, like not being a content creator. So my main thing is understanding the basis of human behavior, and like simplifying the character's nature into human behavior and what this would mean, right? Trying to go ahead and analyze the structures, power dynamics, all of these things. And oftentimes, what I've noticed from a community or two from the Here and Go is they would use that and be like, oh, let's go ahead and take some screenshots out of context. Let's go ahead and list a person's words. Let's go ahead and say that they pre-read or they pre-done everything, and this is exactly why he's able to guess certain things. And all of a sudden, it's like a community of like hit and run commentators, right? Because I always do this. I'm always like, hey, if you want to go ahead and have an open conversation about any character, come on Twitch. It's an open invitation to go ahead and like talk about these characters and genuinely go in deep. But what ends up perpetuating is like a notion of you're the villain, you're the bad guy. Oh, SB talked crap about her character. He's saying that it's not a well-written story, and it's like, no. For example, one of the big things that I often said was, for ReZero and Moshko Tensei and any novel out there, if it's following any of the like principles of psychology that I talk about for any characters, that means that the author did a little bit of research into psychology, that they're well-grounded characters, right? And that's not me attacking the characters at all. That's me saying, hey, these are realistic characters because we see their flaws. But I feel like people take, for example, if you were to say, oh, well, Paul is a bit of a scumbag, people are going to take that and run with it, my friend.
Yeah, they really do. Especially if you do that to a female character. Um, Another example would be Dharmachi, because I really like Freya, just because of how she stirs the pot. Like, she's not a good person. Like, she gaslights, she manipulates, she brainwashes people. But I just find her really interesting because of her flaws and why she is the way she is. Like, when I see a character, I don't want to just know what their flaws are. I want to know why they're flawed in the way they are. And that's what I find really good about certain light novel series. That's why I like Dharmachi, because it explains why certain gods and goddesses are flawed in the way they are, their experiences in the higher heavens and then on the earth, and how it changes their perspective. But when you like sit there and you say, "Oh yeah, I really like Freya as a character," they go, "Oh, so you're defending her gaslighting belt?" It's like, no, I'm not defending Gaslight. I'm just saying that she's a complex, deep, interesting character. I understand why she's doing it. I don't agree with why she's doing it, but I find the story interesting. And they're like, "No, you're defending Freya." It's like, sure, she's got nice tits, she's got nice ass. I'd totally bang it, but I wouldn't want to date her or marry her because she'd probably gaslight me into doing some really horrible things. So it's like, there's a difference.
There is a big difference in that. Jumping off of this, I guess this is, we might start going in a little bit deep if you're okay with that.
That's fun.
So my thing is, when it comes to like, we're gonna go even before creation. Let's go with moments of anxiety for you personally. After high school, after say going into college, going into whatever your life is like. Have there been any big moments of anxiety that come from either social media or anything like that? And how do you usually deal with it?
I would say, thank God my mother's not here. She'd be like, he gets anxiety all the time. I do get a lot of anxiety. I used to get some, well, I still do occasionally when I read my comments because some of them can just be really vicious, but I've
Right.
kind of learned to block that out a little bit better. I'm not immune, but I try to prepare myself all the time with some of the comments. And I think the one rule that I'm trying to teach myself is ignore them. Like,
Yeah.
don't get into a fight with them because there's the one saying that I do believe I dig myself in is as that don't ever get into an argument with a stupid person because they'll beat you down to their level and then beat you down further. So I try to like not get into arguments with people that I can clearly see are trying to bait me. But there's the occasions where I do get a little bit like, oh, you know what, I'm going to play a little bit of ball with you. And I try to make sure that I'm in control. And if I lose control of myself, like I'm getting too emotional, I'm just like, all right, take a step back. Remember, it's the internet. And these are just people. As flawed as they might be, I'm also flawed. So I need to take a step back.
Right.
I am very critical of myself as a human because of the fact that the experiences that I've gone through. And especially from high school onwards, I went through a lot of health issues and it messed me up a lot mentally. And that's why I think I find flawed characters interesting because I like to understand how other characters are flawed because I've seen the flaws in myself as I grew up in high school because I got very, very, very sick. And the education system was not pleasant to me. The teachers used that as an opportunity to be complete and utter douches. They made my life miserable and it made me into a very, very, very petty person. I was very angry, very
Right.
vindictive, very spiteful because of how bad my health conditions were. Like I got very sick. I got food poisoning from prepackaged meat, from sandwich meat,
Right.
and it completely destroyed my insides. It destroyed my large bowel, and I spent many, many, many years on medication trying to sort of fight it constantly, off and on, off and on, off and on. And it was just a long, tedious battle of trying to keep my body together. And I still remember the day when I went into my specialist and I said to him, I've given up. I'm done. Just get rid of it. Because there was only one real cure. It was either medication or have it removed. I just sat there and I said to him, I'm done. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep going from the toilet bleeding every day to just hoping that maybe one day things will be better. And he just bawled his eyes out and he said, okay. And that was when I had my surgery. Still having massive health problems, but I feel like I'm much more older and mature to kind of try and overcome it. But back then I was very young. All I wanted was just to feel normal, just
Right.
to live a normal life, get a girlfriend, live a happy life, live my little fairy tale that I wanted to live. And that completely shattered. And school wasn't pleasant. Students made sure that they reminded me of my flaws as a human physically, especially with the fact that in high school I was very thin as well.
Right.
And the doctors don't know if it was just my high metabolism or if it was because I had these internal issues going on in it. One of the things that having a bowel problem does is that your body doesn't absorb nutrients. It doesn't absorb waters, foods, etc. So you have to drink more water. You have to eat more to try and hold as much nutrients as possible. So your body just burns through that energy. And because I have a high metabolism, it's like adding two major problems. So I'm always very thin and lean,
Right.
which I've been accused of being anorexic, but those doctors that have accused me of it have been completely pulverized by other better, higher qualified doctors sitting there going, you can shut the F up. He does not starve himself. So, especially when those specialists see me in hospital and I'm sitting there eating the food that they're giving me, and then my mother's bringing me homemade food and I'm eating that on top of it. And they're like, how are you eating all that? It's like, I'm hungry. So, it was
So,
definitely a very up and down ride. And I think that's why I like kind of flawed characters.
well, with that, I do want to go ahead and touch on that because you mentioned on a couple big key points that I think is important. I also want to say thank you, Brady, for bringing in all your raiders. We have another party of 38 joining us. Um, and I do want to say hi, guys. In case you guys don't know, this is SB. Little interaction. In case you guys don't know, I'm content creator, amazing individuals. Check him out on YouTube. But I do want to say, in case you guys don't know, hi, my name's Edgar. I'm a psychologist as well. Studied with Brady. Been doing this for it's longer than you guys can imagine. Analyzing anime and everything in between. I appreciate all of you guys being here. I am a little bit with the notifications off, giving you guys that heads up, just because all my attention's on SB. So giving you that up. Appreciate y'all. Practice some self-care. I will be talking with you guys and everything in a bit. But SB, my big thing is when it comes to trauma, right? When it comes to moments of trauma, when it comes to actually feeling like, for example, going through moments of trauma, either through the educational system, through personal life issues and all of that, doesn't it give you more of an empathetic sense towards the characters that you're summarizing and doing your reviews on? And for example, you mentioned that you find flawed characters interesting, right? So for you, why do you find these characters interesting? What draws you to them?
I'm not really sure I have the right answer because I feel like it's more just a gut instinct that I just I'm more gravitated towards those flawed characters. But I would definitely say I became much more drawn towards finding interesting flawed characters and understanding why they're flawed as I've more matured. And I
Mm.
think that's just because of my life experiences. And I definitely think it probably has to do with the fact that I went through all the stuff with my health problems, because it wasn't just the education system, it wasn't just the kids in general at school. But I think one thing that really made me quite bitter was my family, because I have an inside joke with myself. I have three types of family members: those
Uh-huh.
that think I'm dead, those that treat me like I'm dead, and those that are dead. Because, funny story, my mother pranked them and said that I died one day from the health conditions. None of them gave a shit. None of them came
Oh,
to my bed when I was sick. They made empty promises. I have family out there. Most of them think I'm dead, and most of them treat me like I'm dead. And so I became quite bitter at my family as well. And I think the friends that I have, I do really cherish, and that's why I also really do love like those rom-com style stories where it's about friendship and holding your friendship and being loyal, because I do cherish the friends that I do have and that are
right.
loyal to me. And I do not, and I mean, I know deep down inside, I do not condone disloyalty. Like, it is a thing that really irks me. Like, if you're disloyal, you've pissed me off, because I really do prioritize loyalty amongst loyals. Like, if my friends need me, I'll be there, rain or
Right.
shine. I remember my friend said, "Oh, my computer's broke. 3 o'clock at night." I was like, "Pick me up. I'm up. Get up. We'll fix it." And he's like, "Okay." Like, anytime they need my help, no matter how small or big, I'd always be there, because I
Right.
always value friendship, loyalty, and I think that's one of the reasons why I do like those kind of series, because you see like Paul, Rudy. I use it as an example because it's the easiest one to point
Yeah.
out. Reventi is just, you see them come closer and you see them learn from their mistakes and they build that friendship, and it really has a much more bigger rippling effect. And it will later on, I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
spoil, but it will have a big rippling effect, their argument, and it will build the foundations of a strong friendship. Because I don't think Rudy ever sees Paul as a father figure. He sees him as a true friend, which I
Right.
think is important in parenting as well. Like, you need to not just be a parent, but also a friend that they can trust and come to and be like, "Hey, got these problems. Can you help me?" Because I think
Well,
that's important. Because being a parent's just like, yeah, make sure you don't do this, do that, do your chores. But a friend is someone that you can confide to, I feel like.
and jumping off of that, because you're hitting on a lot of major points, and I always love talking about this, so I'll quickly mention it. For me, it's like the groundings of a parent. Like one of them is like watching over your kid, watching them grow up, and then sliding from that role of being a parent to being an advisor, right? To and that's it's that managerial shift that has to slowly but surely happen, and naturalistically it happens for a lot of people. But through that, there's also a difference in parenting, and I think this is one of the big areas there, which is your parents can go ahead and give you, there are a lot of parents, and I hate this because it happens so often, especially I do therapy like for adults, kids, older people, everything in between. I tend to do it for the younger populations, and I recently came up with the health issue, because I'm helping the underprivileged populations. They don't have all their vaccines and shots like that. I recently got like latent TB, uh, so like latent tuberculosis because of exposure for an element like that. So I've been like medically, like, getting myself fixed for the best aspect that I can. But one thing that came through from this interactions or these moments that I've had with them is parents think that just because they give you a place to sleep, food, water, that they're fantastic parents. But that is the base minimum for being a parent. And oftentimes when you reference this, even towards adults, they get this weird sensation of, wait, what do you mean? what do you mean that that's the base minimum for being a parent? It's like, no, that is the base minimum for quite literally being a parent. Being a good parent is being there for your child, understanding them, their like security, supporting them, giving them praise, disciplining them when they need to be disciplined, being realistic. But I want to jump back from that real quick because you mentioned a couple key areas that I think is important. Loyalty and attachments. I think loyalty in your friends is huge. Having friends that are there for you and that are not going to backstab you or snakes out in your yard per se is one of the biggest moments out there. And I think, or one of the biggest things as to why we form connections. And being there with, like, for example, reaching out and making genuine connections nowadays, for some reason, I find it weird because people always have a double meaning behind the connections that they try to make. I'm not sure how that's been for you on like the grand title of social media, the Twitter and content creation world. But as an individual, have you encountered situations like that?
In real life, definitely. I've
Hmm.
made a couple of friends that ended up not being the best choices just because of the sort of the mindset that they had and just how they treated their own friends and how they kind of treated friends like it was like a walk in, walk out. You're like convenient to be my friend when it suits me kind of thing. As far as online, I'm very, very thorough with my
Uh-huh.
checks. Like I always check like the person in general, being like, okay, like because I constantly get like DMs or emails with content creators being like, oh, we should collab and all that. Like at the Chick channel, look at it, it's like 100 subs. They've made it 3 months ago, and I'm like, talk to me in a couple of months when you've shown that you're committed, and we'll discuss it then. And then a month later they quit, and I'm just like, So those kind of them trying to collaborations or friendships, whatever they're trying to make, I kind of always question. So most of my friends online are much more, especially content creator wise, are much more limited. But as far as online friends, because I did a lot of gaming back in my days, back when I
Right.
was sick, I used to play World of Warcraft a lot. And I used to play on American servers because, well, back then, American and Australian servers were both the same latency, so it was just easy to play on a more high populated server. I did a lot of raiding with World of Warcraft people, and I made a lot of friends,
Hey.
and I'm still friends to this day. And when I moved to an Australian server, when they finally gave us proper servers, I joined a couple of guilds, and I joined one guild, and he was my raid leader, and he was named Spaz, and he knew about my health conditions. So whenever we went from boss fights to trash fights, I'd run to the toilet because I'd
Hmm.
always need to go to the toilet every like so often.
Right.
And some of his raid members complained. They're like, well, why does he get to go AFK during the trash? And he's like, because he has a health problem. And on top of that, he does the best performance. He tries the best. He does the best. I didn't even have add-ons. I refused to use add-ons because I just didn't like using them because it trivialized the game. And people complained because they'd have add-ons to check if I had add-ons. And even he defended me. He's like, he's the best raider. He does what he's told. Defend him. And our friendship built so well that when I wanted to do YouTube, he said, quit World of Warcraft, do YouTube. If you can stick to it to a year, I'll help you out. And a year later, on his word, he bought all of this and
Whoa.
the all that stuff. And it was a couple of thousand he spent. It wasn't me that bought it, it was him. And he bought it, and then he even bought me my phone and everything. And I call him my sugar daddy, but me and him, our friendship is like rock solid. I still remember when someone tried to start a fight between us,
Uh-huh.
and I had his number, and he's in New Zealand, and I rung him, and I was like desperate to like fix it. I was like, dude, this is a misunderstanding. Like someone's setting me off. And then we talked it out, and ever since then we've been rock solid. And that's the friendships that I truly, truly cherish, and I
Right.
really look to as like they will never leave my heart. Another
Right.
one is a bouncer. We used to do random. We used to PvP all the time, and to this day, he still keeps in contact with me. He always tells me that I should date his daughter because his daughter keeps getting with really shit guys, and I'm like, don't think I can handle your daughter, man. But he always jokes about it. He's like, oh, my daughter should find a man like I'm like, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but it's those friendships that I really do. I look back to and I never forget them. They're like always ingrained in my memory as like true cherished memories. And those I kind of look for,
Uh-huh.
especially in animes, I think, as well, because I do really love them, and it kind of brings back that reminiscing feeling of back in those days when you can really remember those moments that you enjoy playing, doing stuff with them, whether it's online or out in the world. It's just yeah, and especially online because I couldn't exactly go out because of my bowel problems, because
Right.
you need to be near a toilet. So it's
Right.
like I'm always scoping for one. So if there's a toilet down my hallway, well, I can play games all the time and just chill.
But through that, I think first off, people that try and break up good friendships suck. Let's be realistic
Oh
about
yeah.
it. Yeah, it hurts a friendship and it hurts all like it hurts you because at the end of the day, you're put in this role where your friendship's at risk and this connection with the genuine person that you've made and have known for so long is like teetering. And that's why good job on communication, good job on like restoring that friendship and solidifying it. But also, hey, you know what? Your friend sounds like a real bro. I'm gonna be straight up with you. Not a lot of people keep their words. And the fact that he met, like, he's like, hey, you do this for a year, I got your back, and he stepped up and like just being there with you. I'm sure just emotionally as an individual probably speaks louder, and especially getting all the stuff as well. We'll do that as a side bonus, but literally being there with you and being a good friend speaks louder than I think anything else would. Because I think promises are cheap, but actually sticking through with it and fulfilling them, that's everything. That's everything. So, jumping on to this next subject, and just going off of certain things, looking back at your first couple of videos that you did, are there any things that you wish you would have given yourself previous advice on? Like,
I mean, I remember when I first started YouTube, I joined a YouTube community, like content creator community forum, and I was posting my videos there, and they were constantly giving me advice like lighting and all that kind of stuff. But I think the advice I would give myself wouldn't apply because I would just be too scared to apply that
right,
advice. A lot of it was about more confidence, free speaking, because I don't do well with scripts because I also have the language disorder, so I'm not very good at reading and writing.
right.
I'm partially dyslexic, which is funny coming from someone that covers light novels. I do have a secret trick to that, how I
Oh,
consume light novels. Um, but I would say to myself to try and maybe, if I gave advice to myself, I would tell myself to find something much more specific and kind of stick to it, kind of like where I did with the second channel, where I was like more isekai, power fantasies, light novel analysis content.
hmm,
My biggest issue, which is still haunting me on my main channel, is I got too broad in the anime content. Like I started doing recommendations, reviews, topics, news, light novels, analysis, mangas. Like I did too much and I spread myself too thin, which ended up spreading my fans out too far. And that ended
right,
up doing some damage overall on the algorithm. But when I made the second channel and I started doing specific stuff, that just does so much better. So I feel like my advice would be find a niche, find a system where you're like, okay, this is the content and don't spread out too far. Because the problem with being a YouTuber is you've got to spread yourself out far enough that you've got enough content to cover and it's not just the same rubbish, but
right,
not too far out where it spreads the audience out and ends up creating massive like different communities that are like, oh, I'm only here for news, or I'm only here for reviews, or I'm only here for topics, that kind of stuff. It's like imagine if you did sports and gardening and you've got like a split 50-50. It's like it makes it really hard to appease the both unless somehow it was like a sports gardening video kind of thing as an example.
right. It would get a little difficult to appease all parties, all people, what all people want. But through that, I think that that's actually solid advice. And going for all of that, what is your best memory from so far in your content creation world?
All the viral videos now.
Right?
Actually, my first viral video was actually my worst viral video. It was me mispronouncing the word Sebas as Sebastian. Don't know why I did that. It was an overall video. I deleted it, but it was my best performing video. And that's when I learned mispronouncing words is your greatest accomplishment. As a content creator, here's some advice. Mispronounce every word you can find. Why? Because it triggers people. And when they get triggered, they leave a comment. And when they leave a comment, that does makes the video do better. And
You
downvotes still count as an actual engagement. So downvote, upvote, it doesn't matter. But
I, you're
I'm not
breaking
trying
the
to encourage bad
algorithm.
behavior, but that's how the algorithm works. It really is. And I remember 4 Anime, he's like constantly saying, I'm going to mispronounce this word because it's going to trigger them. Boom, 20K views overnight. It's like, that's how you do it. But I think the best memories are just some of the interactions, some of the meaningful conversations, especially the friends made along the way. I
Yeah.
think those what really are quite impactful to me. I mean, making the content is fun itself, but I think just the interactions, like the good ones, and
Uh-huh.
then the friends that you make and the like communities that you build around you that aren't toxic, but the good ones that you build are the really ones that I cherish quite a lot, especially the good interactions. Because I do read 99.99% of my comments. The only comments I don't read are the ones that are comments under comments like a week later, because you can't see comments after a comment in a
Right.
video on the main panel, which you know what the UI is like. It's, yeah, you only see new, fresh comments.
Well, my big thing off of that is, because when you first release a video, it's always awesome to go out and see some of those comments. And I know we talked a little bit of like some of the harsh comments that may come in from time to time. I love, for example, this is just me praising my mods because it was Mod Appreciation Day. I love the fact that they pre-read everything and they scout out stuff. So they're like, don't look at this because this might, like, it's bad, it's good. Appreciate you guys. But at the same time, it's like, how long, like for me it's like a week. After a week it's rare for me to go back and start looking at some of those comments, just because I'm onto like, our heads down, we're grinding, we're like putting in like more work, new videos are coming up, new content's coming up, so it's quite a bit. With that, I do want to ask you, what is the longest video that you have made, if you remember that?
It was an Overlord light novel review, and it was close, I think 28 minutes long, and that was just straight talking back to back. Because I don't do scripts,
Uh-huh.
I'd free talk like this. So
Uh-huh.
I will either do dot points or I will try and remember everything off by heart. So some of the light novels, I will just talk and talk and talk and talk about different things that I thought, experienced, how they affected. One of the things I like doing in those videos is like giving real life examples. Like I do with this interview, I'll give like real life examples of how that affected me, why I think that way. And I think it adds value, but it also makes the videos turn out much longer, which I guess is good for the algorithm and ad revenue. But it it just, yeah, that one was like 28 minutes, and I remember the Overlord light novels were quite meaty. I think most of them were well and truly over like 15.
Right. And that's still quite a bit of work, especially like even going through bullet points and like remembering what you have to say or how you want to lead the conversation. I think that's great. I think it's great the fact that
My
like
old videos, I would use to edit out my breathing, because I used to struggle with talking itself until I got more fluent. I would talk like this and then continue talking and talking and talking and talking and
right.
talking and talking and then go. So I would edit out the big breathing points, so people noticed there were like little clipping points. So those took ages to edit out, because I would always have to look for the big breathes and be like, okay, get rid of that, get rid of that. But as I got better, I kind of made it more fluent, so I didn't have to edit nearly as much. But I still try to add some eye candy. I used to add clipping,
Uh-huh.
but I'm petrified of the YouTube system, so I don't add clipping, even though I know how to edit for clipping. But yeah, I've done a couple, and I've gotten a couple of claims, not copyright strikes, and I'm just like too scared to risk it, especially with smaller channels.
I was about to say, considering the wave of copyright strikes that have hit a bunch of channels lately,
I saw
terrifying.
one channel get 54.
Oh, oh! I recently saw like a person who does analysis on Gundam and 86 and all of these things. Literally, all of their videos got copyright struck and they're off. And I'm like, oh, that's rough.
That's one of the reasons why I deleted all my ReZero videos, even though they were just using still shot images from the light novels. I just got too scared, because I saw like Natali and all those, they were getting like copyright strikes, claims, and all that, and I was just like, oh, no, I don't want to lose my channel. Like, it's not worth it over a couple of videos, especially if they're not performing heaps well. It's like, nah, I'm not going to risk it.
Okay, actually, you're bringing in a perfect concept of a talk here, right? So, what do you think is fair use? And I'm going to go to and use this in general, because I love to make long form content. Like, I think the longest video of mine has been like 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours, literally just breaking down everything. It took forever, right? But for you, it's like, what does fair use entail in terms of both, like, say, the light novel reading, analyzing, creating content world versus, say, the emoji reaction world of things as well? Because I'm sure you've ran into some.
Yeah. I am friends with some reactionary channels, but
Uh-huh.
there are like two different types of reactionary channels that I see. The ones that do give proper reactions, they say things during it, they give some analysis during it, and they don't really show the series. It's kind of like you're watching along with them, like they're sitting next to you, but you're not seeing the show on the screen, which
Mhm.
a lot of people complain about because they're like, oh, well, I want to watch it. So that's called breaking fair use. But I would say the ones that don't follow fair use are definitely, well, light novel channels. It's the text to speech bot ones that read the entire light novel in a video that I find that aren't fair use, and that's obvious because it's just complete copyright breaking. As far as reactionary content goes, I think that's really the only sort of area that's like the hot topic debate, because I think anything that's like analytical is
Mhm.
fair use. I mean, clipping is more just eye candy itself, as long as it's not like showing like entire like 20-minute scenes or something. People aren't really going to complain if it's like little small snippets of 3 seconds and all that kind of stuff, like how Giga and all those do their editing.
Right.
I think the issue with copyright or fair use when it comes down to reactionary channels that don't really give reactions, it's just reaction in the name, but they kind of just, they've got it down in the screen, maybe a little bit of blur in here and there to kind of get through the copyright system, and all they do is they just grunt during the entire series. They go, oh yeah, that
Yeah.
kind of thing throughout the entire like 24 minutes. Then I'm kind of like, then they complain on Twitter when they get copyright stuff, and I'm like, that you asked for. Like, if you're just going to grunt during it and show the entire series right in that corner, you're begging for copyright strikes. But then there's reaction channels where, like I mentioned, they do it properly. It's
Right.
more that they talk as they go along the experience, which I think those are the proper ones. But
The
I
pausing and
do like
talking.
the ones where like you'll go through like a couple of scenes, you'll watch like a 5-10 second scene and then you'll break it down. I think those are really good because you're not watching the show, you're more getting context to a scene and then you're getting an analysis on that scene. But even
Right.
then YouTube is broken, they still copyright strike that stuff. But I think that follows fair use as well. I think it's just if you go to the extreme, the grunt
Right.
ones, then I'm like, yeah, it's not fair use. That's just
Well, I was gonna
blatant.
say, if they just keep making their thumbnail face over and over for 10 minutes, they get views, right?
Oh
There you
my
go.
god.
There you go. Exactly. But realistically speaking, actually, you know what? I'm gonna start a war. Let's start a war. Who is your waifu and why? We're starting a war.
It's
See?
okay, my shoulder as I did that, so it makes it look like I'm getting ready for a battle, which I
I know,
probably
right?
am.
Like, let's get ready.
Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, do what you gotta do. Oh, check, you're not ready. Also, hey Brady, hey all of you guys that came in through. Oh, oh, I wasn't expecting it. Oh, I didn't think you'd have it ready. Oh boy, bruh, I didn't think you'd
Hey,
have it ready.
now I'm starting to play more. I got that for my birthday from a friend, but I would say that and probably, I mean, I have a couple of waifus. I would say Arcano, Camilla from Fire Emblem. That really triggers Fire Emblem fans if you say Camilla,
Oh yeah,
because Camilla's seen as nothing more than the busty bimbo. But if you actually play her story, she's actually much more complex. She's very flawed. She comes from a really bad, tragic background that's used as nothing more than a political pawn. But I do really like those kind of characters. Yes, they're busty. Maybe it's the boobs, but
maybe.
they're still really good characters.
First off, I think it's fantastic. For me, I have honestly, it's albedo. I'm just gonna be straight up about it. I like toxic people like Jamabi Yumiko, albedo. I have Ram and Chica here, but if I could, realistically, if I could, oh God, yeah. Now chat's just throwing up a bunch of random. Yeah, never mind. I'm just gonna shut up. I think I'll go with albedo just for safety. They're gonna say Makima. I knew it. I knew it. A chat randomly chats like Makima, and I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that Dami Mommy complex, dude. It just does something for me, you know? Okay, going off of this, Ellen, oh God, going off of this, my next question for you is, I guess, seeing both shows, right? Or seeing it, I guess, if we're going to go into comparison for both shows of ReZero and Moshiko Tensei, right? We have different characters and different growth patterns. For me personally, and you can disagree at any moment, I find Rudeus to be a mirror that is often held up to people and they get out of it what they want. So if you've been through trauma, you're able to empathize a little bit more with the character and you're able to see a little bit further into the dimensions. And if you're only say that seeing it through a base view or through the top lens view, that's all you're gonna get. Same thing with Subaru, his trauma and everything that he goes through, dying, coming back in again. That's no surprise to everyone. That's not a spoiler. That's literally his ability first episode. That's a major form of trauma. For you, what form of trauma or what story stuck out more to you and why?
Revenge, Jobless Reincarnation, of course,
Okay.
or just in general. Jobless Reincarnation, I think Rudy's, but I would say second. Elise's story does kind of really reminisce because she
Uh-huh.
kind of goes through that loneliness thing. Like she can't feel like she can ever really be with someone because of her curse. I'm now having a mental breakdown thinking, shit, do people know about this?
I
Yeah,
don't.
nah,
You're
I'm
good.
not
You're
saying,
good. No worries.
but no context. But yeah, she,
Yeah.
she she has a tragic backstory. She's lonely, and she's a character that I really do enjoy for that reason. Um, I think that's why I kind of like her. But again, everyone will just go to, she's busty. Actually, no, she's not busty. She's kind of flat. But she's still, like, she's a really sweet, gentle, good character. But she also has her own flaws as well, personality wise. As far as other characters from other stories go, I mean, Overlord, I'd use the example of Irons. He's kind of the same situation. He's lonely, and because
Mm-hmm.
he's lonely, he ends up doing stuff that he's probably not really comfortable with. Like he's massacring, mass murdering, but he's doing it to protect the only thing that he has left. That was sort of a relic of his friendships, which is all the characters that are there, like Albedo right behind. See, I do have
Right.
Albedo chat. Um, I think probably those. I think it's the characters that are trying to build something like a friendship or a relationship that I kind of really do kind of connect with the most
Right.
because of probably the traumas I've been through, because of the fact that my family's just treated me like I'm dead. I've definitely had some friends that have definitely just kicked me to the curb and just left when it's not, and even it's not because of anything like health wise or personality wise. They've just decided, oh, I mean, I had one friend that I was in high school with for a really long time, and he just got a girlfriend. And he's just like, I don't need friends anymore. See ya. And that was it. And
Oh,
I was whinging about it on my birthday the other week. I was like, oh yeah, that asshole that left us after he got a girlfriend, and he apparently randomly messages other people, but he never messaged me, which I was one of his closest friends. And I was just like, I see how it stands, bro. I see how it stands. So
right.
it's I think those are the characters that I do really connect with, is that sense of loneliness, which is probably why I like Freya as well, because Freya is a very lonely person. I mean, I'll learn from my mistake uh, with the spoilers there, but Freya is a very lonely person. I mean, she has the ability to enchant anyone that goes near her. So
Right.
naturally, she's going to be scared to go near anyone because she can't be sure who loves her or looks up to her as a friend, because, well, everyone's just infatuated with her because of the aura. So she feels lonely because it's like, well, are you generally in love with me, or are you a friend to me, or are you just doing that because of my aura's just brainwashing you, kind of thing. So
Right.
those are the kind of characters I really do find probably most interesting
Hmm.
because of that loneliness. Albedo, she's not lonely, she's just horny.
Yeah, big
That's just
difference. But through that, dude, SB, I really want to say thanks for sharing those stories, because sharing your story, it's a lot, dude. It's a moment of vulnerability, and honestly, like, if there's one takeaway, I hope you know, like, no matter what, like I genuinely do appreciate you for who you are as an individual, not just the content creator side, but like what you have to offer and what you have offered, like in terms of helping others, and even the comments that you make on Twitter, which actually make me bust out laughing from time to time, dude. I'm just scrolling and your replies and Nat's replies like keep popping up in my feed, and I'm like, all right, I'm set for the day. This is awesome. But legitimately, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing those stories, because it's not an easy story to tell. And when I hear that, man, I'm like, that must have been such a tough time, especially with family members, like just being okay with you being dead, for example, not even get caring for that reason. That's, man, I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
yeah, it's definitely an experience. I mean, that's why I sympathize with a lot of people that have had massive health conditions, and when their family ditches them or friends kind of distance themselves, it's kind of one of those where I'm like, I pat them on the shoulder, I'm like, yeah, I know how you feel. It's definitely one of those, and I mean that's like one major dark chapter of my life, and there's still many others that I won't go too deep into because they're very much darker. But my health problems have always been something that is much more prevalent. And
Right.
I don't have a problem talking about it. It's more like the really itty gritty, like disgusting kind of things about like what the illness does that I don't really talk about.
Right.
That's just like stuff that wouldn't make you want to eat dinner. But as far as like the effects that it has, yeah, I think it's definitely affected how I socialize as well, which is why the online aspect of the internet is convenient and why I've attached myself. But one thing that my mother always used to say to me, she always used to say to me, she's like, for someone that spends so much time on the internet and doesn't really go out that much, you have very good social skills. And I'm like, I just learn not what to do. I learn from examples. So I see what other people do and I go, that's probably not something you should do. But then I
Right.
also learn from my own mistakes, which is the whole thing I said at the start. Like I'm very critical of myself. I analyze my own behavior and go, should have I done that? Shouldn't have I done that? Why did I do it? Understand why I did it, and then be like, okay, what would have been the best course of action, kind of thing.
So through that, have you ever felt limited, and you can say, dude, you're going too deep with this, but like, have you ever felt limited by your medical conditions, like in any way, shape, or form?
Oh yeah, absolutely, very limited. Um, I think one of the things that made me very angry and bitter was because when I had the surgery for the removal of the large bowel, I had two choices. I either would stick with the stoma. So those that don't know what a stoma is, it's basically a hole in the side of your gut, just here,
Uh-huh.
that is where poop comes out. And so you're wondering, well, what do you do with the poop if it's coming out of your side? You'd have a special bag, you'd exchange the bag every day. And I didn't want to have that. So I had a J pouch, and that J pouch is what I'm going to end up having removed in the coming months because it doesn't work. It's just my body's rejecting that kind of thing, and it's caused more issues, which has caused a rare liver disease. I can't remember how to pronounce the acronyms, but it's scoliosis or something, a rare liver disease that's being damaged because of the bowel. And so all the limiting factors is like energy levels. So I don't have the energy like I used to as a young kid. It just emotionally just kind of destroys you because you're just like, ugh. You just like
Right.
you feel emotionally down. But I always try to sort of look at the positives. But I think the anxiety doesn't even come from the health problems. It's the system itself that gives me anxiety because of the fact that I do YouTube, I don't make heaps of money, so I'm unemployed technically. And
Right.
because I live in Australia, we're under a system called Centrelink. Centrelink are bullies. They are psychotic bullies in the most pure sense, and they enjoy making your life miserable. And they generally give me anxiety. There will be nights where I will not sleep because I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, what are they going to make me have to do? And it's basically just pure blackmail. They're just like, well, we won't pay you if you don't jump through this hoop on fire. So those are the kind of things that really hinder. And the limiting factor from the health is that I can't do the things that they require me to do because they're like, go do physical manual labor, go to a construction site and build stuff. And it's like, I physically cannot do that. Like,
Right.
I'd love to, but I can't. And then
Right.
it's just like they stay, yeah. And so it does really limit. Friendship wise, right now it's kind of those when you go out you've got to scope for a toilet, so I'm always like, if I'm at a place, I'm like, okay, where's a toilet just in case I need to go, because if I need to go to the toilet, I need to go to the toilet. There's no holding. You hold for too long,
Right.
it's not going to look pretty. So it does limit a lot of those things, and I do wonder if it did limit, like it kind of maybe made some of my friends not want to be near me
Right.
because of the fact that it was a limiting factor. It was a bit of a thing, like they're like, oh, he's got these problems, and it's like, oh well, I don't want to be his friend because of it. And if that's the case, that's fair enough. That's the decision. They're a free human being, but I don't look kindly on it. I see that as disloyal because if someone else had that, I would be there to support them throughout the way. I wouldn't care if they stunk like shit.
Right.
I had friends that smelled like dope, and I didn't care. I was like, yeah, you do you. You're not hurting anyone. But yeah,
But that's the thing, is that's what a true friend would do, right? A true friend, it's like, it doesn't matter how you look, like how you smell, like, good days or bad days, it's they're there for the person that you are, not for the physical aspects of who you, like, how you present. My big question with all of this is, like, first off, dude, that's Oh yeah, Victor's one of the chatters is asking if they couldn't accommodate for you, if CenturyLink couldn't accommodate for you in some way, shape, or form. I have a friend who's also over there, and from what I've learned, CenturyLink is bullies. You're right; they are a bunch of bullies. I've heard that
Yeah.
story before as well.
With Centrelink, it's a very complicated system because it's a system within a system within a system where you've there's the system itself where Centrelink oversees everything, and then there's job networks, which their job is to try and help you find work. But the problem is they're just simply a business trying to get government grants, so they will do any stupid thing to make money. Like they'll send you for a cause for something that is not going to help you, just so they can get a couple of extra dollars. So you're kind of treated as nothing more than like a guinea pig in a constant wheel, just doing their bidding so that they can continue getting grants. And Centrelink used to be government run. That's now privately run, and it's gotten much worse because they simply just they will harass people. And there's been situations called robo debt, which is where they made up fake debts, harassed people, and then those people, let's just say,
Yeah,
didn't take well to that kind of thing, and it ended up on the news. So you can kind of gather what happened to them. And government had to step in, well, one side of the government, I'm not going to get into policy, but the government ended up having to step in because it got really bad. And it's just a very flawed system. It does help people, but
hmm
it's very flawed. I've had doctors saying that I should be under disability pinching, but they won't give it to me because apparently I'm not sick enough, even though I can't physically work. And I've gotten doctor certificates. I've got 5 specialists. I've got a surgeon, a bone specialist, a liver specialist, a bowel specialist, and then my normal doctor as well. And I've got the head gastrologist for my state overseeing my documents because of just it's a mess. So
wow,
it's just one of those where it's just like I got a whole team of specialists. It's not just a team of doctors or nurses or students. No, it's a team of specialists, the top
right.
of their industry that oversee my body. Because apparently my body is just a very bizarre and weird thing with high metabolisms, body parts just randomly dysfunctioning. They wanted to do guinea pig tests on me. When I was a child, they did lock me in a hospital because they
Uh huh.
believed my mother was starving me. They found out the hard way that she wasn't starving me.
Right.
I just had a very high metabolism. And so it's just one of those where my body is just very weird. And so yeah, it does affect a lot of day to day life. And because of that, Centrelink just don't give a shit. They
Right.
don't understand. And because they're not specialists, they think they are. They think they're doctors, but they're not. They think they can make you jump through hoops that I just can't physically do. And because they need the money to survive, YouTube gives some money, but nowhere near enough to survive on. It's just one of those where I am very much blackmailed into a system that is just very messed up. And they
Right.
are really annoying because I've been not getting emails or letters from them telling me about stuff that I should know. And then they'll send me stuff that it's like, okay, fine, you're telling me that stuff, but they won't tell me the critical stuff. And they're just making me jump through hoops. I'm trying to get on self employment because of YouTube, but you have to earn a certain amount, you have to jump through certain hoops, and it's just one problem after another. But
But
even then, I've seen people with less health conditions get pensions and disability benefits, but I have worse conditions and I'm not entitled to it. So it's just like, it's really stupid.
yeah, and honestly, that sounds. If you want to talk about anxiety, that does sound anxiety-inducing. I'm not even going to lie to you. And with that, I did want to go ahead and point out that is probably one of the biggest misconceptions that I think a lot of people have is you're a YouTuber, you make money, and it's like that's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. You're a streamer, you make money. It's like that's not how that works either, chat. Just letting you know. It's not like you're getting paid a handsome amount by YouTube in any way, shape, or
I think
form.
sometimes people see what Mr. Beast gets and thinks that's what everyone gets. For those that don't actually know, Mr. Beast gets a higher premium rate for his RPM because he is a larger content creator.
Yeah.
So if you're a big top tier content creator, you get better ads than what other content creators do. And depending on the content you cover, depends on the type of ads you get, just for sneaky information about how the system works. So if you were to say cover, say, economic analysis kind of content, that kind of stuff, financial market, you get premium ads, you'll get insurance ads, car ads, those kinds of things. But if you're an anime content creator or a gaming content creator,
Yeah.
you will get gaming ads, anime ads, the fluffy stuff. which don't pay as much. So there's many tiers. Like Mr. Beast would be getting Coca-Cola ads, which paid the highest premium. I think he said it was like almost like $20, like every like RPM, and I was just like,
Whoa, he's making
I'd like to
bank.
have, yeah, I'd like to have 1/4 of that. I don't even get 1/4 of that.
Whoa, you just saying that just blew my mind because considering the amount of views he's gets and everything, yeah, he's
Yeah, and I
yeah,
mean, economic channels or car channels, like the more like mature kind of content, they get around. I think they can go from $8 to $12, and then yeah, then if you're one of the top tier content creators, which is like Mr. Beast, Logan Paul, Jake Paul, to give an example, those types of top tier content creators, they will get close to 20 RPM, which is millionaire kind of content. But then you go down where you're smaller. The smaller you are, the less revenue you get as a car, and it's just like,
right. Right. And that's sort of a big point that I think, as I said, it's a big misconception that people think that all YouTubers are standard rate when we're not, you know.
RPM stands for rotation per mile. It's a really weird way of putting it. It's basically it's how many ads are watched. So it's not how many views. I'm just answering the chat.
Uh-huh.
It's based on how many ads are viewed. So 1,000 ads will net them roughly $20. Not exact because different ads will give different rates, but ours are much lower. We would be down like 1/6, 1/8 of what they get if we're lucky.
So with that, I kind of want to ask you, do you have any recommendations for an anime that like you feel needs a proper like psychoanalysis? That's right. I'm throwing the ball on your court on this one. Screw chat. Chat gets enough votes for all the shows, but I'm throwing it for you, man.
Well, for me personally, this anime season, I'm going to be covering Cafe Maid.
Uh-huh.
And one of the reasons why I like it is because the main protagonist is quite realistic. So this is kind of spoiled, but it's the basic synopsis. Basically, the main protagonist, his grandmother dies, he comes back. Yes, there are some cliches in it, but there's some good aspects to it. But he comes back, finds out, well, his grandmother's died, he's inherited the cafe, he wants to turn it into a car park so that he can make money from it. But the girls are kind of very much against it. They don't like him. But you kind of understand where he's coming from. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's an economics student. He wants to be rich to prove to his grandmother that he could make do because she struggled. And so I kind of like that kind of concept of the story because yes, it's got good fan service. The girls are hot. It's a good
Yeah.
comedy. It's a harem. And yes, it's a romance, but the characters are much more grounded. Like each of the girls has their own backstory that makes sense. And they're all kind of like it's like a string that they're all tied together, even though it feels like there's just a coincidence that all these girls are in the same cafe working together and
Mm.
they all have their pasts, but their pasts are all tied together in an interesting way. And the main protagonist is very similar to his his other family member. His other family member looks very similar to him, where he's very honor bound. Like he will defend the girls, he'll protect them, and he has a personality. It's not like a harem where it's like, oh, it's Infinite Stratus, where the dude has a personality of a cardboard cutout, and he has the mental capacity of a bloody goldfish. No, this guy like he's very self aware. Like the girls will confess, he won't give them an answer, but he's not giving them an answer because he doesn't know. He's just like he's not sure what to give the answer, and he understands what he's doing is wrong, that he shouldn't lead them on, but he's in that mental dilemma where he's like, I've got to do these things, I've got to protect the cafe, I've got to protect the girls, but I'm not ready to commit to something yet, especially when all the girls are following themselves. So that's one series that I'll be talking about just because I like that kind of aspect.
Uh-huh.
As far as others go, I don't really know enough about all the others. I know everyone's talking about the maid, not the maid one, the superstar one. It's
Idle
got a
one?
weird Chino.
Oshinoko?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also another one as well, which comes off as a very generic isekai, which is
Uh-huh.
I got a cheat sheet, a cheat skill in another world and became unrivaled in the real world too.
Oh,
The only reason why
okay.
that one's interesting is because it's the main protagonist finds a door like Narnia style, goes to an alternative world, he gets buffed, but he can come back home, goes to school, and now he's buffed now. And he's like he was like fat, like Rudy fat
Right.
in the past, and then he becomes a lot more attractive, and then suddenly everyone treats him different. So I'm interested in the psychological part of that because human nature is that a lot of people judge people based on like appearances, like attraction based on appearances. So
Right.
I'm interested to see that one, but I do feel like that's going to be a little bit cliche, but it will have some interesting hooks to it as well.
I think both shows you just mentioned are really, really interesting, just because in terms of like attachments, the attachments that we make with others, right? And for example, I hate to put it this way, right? A lot of people hate to rag, like love to rag on it, like, and especially because it is rag, rent a girlfriend. A lot of people love to hate on it, but personally, like, just the evidence in terms of how we attach to other people and how it starts impacting us psychologically. Not so much Kazu Trash, the main character. I can go on about how he's just a cardboard cutout, but like genuinely out of the relationships that are formed and what it means to connect with other people and even put a business at risk, or the experiences that we make with others and how that's often at shambles whenever it goes into a harem like scenario where you have to pick one and everyone's sort of fighting over one another with the power dynamics at play. That shit enthralls me. I'm all for it, man. Like you're literally just giving me a list of like good stuff to go ahead and watch this coming season. I'm excited.
I love hating on Rent a Girlfriend
It's
just
great.
because you cut it out so much. It's like a disaster. But there are some very realistic elements to it, especially with the main protagonist, because he attaches himself to a girl. He's
Yeah.
desperate to keep that relationship because he just wants that companionship. But at the same time, I always meme on it as being like, this is how you can get a girlfriend by paying your way to it. It's like, it's a gotcha game for real life. You just pay your way to the top. Well, it's a pay to win game in real life kind of
My thing
sense.
is like the ethical violations at play stress me out so much.
Because I've always been sitting there thinking she should have technically gotten in trouble. Like, why hasn't her work like kind of questioned? Why is she only getting like one client? Like, this is like a permanent relationship basically, because he's just paying for her to be his girlfriend, not on
R-
a date, permanently. Like, it's
right.
this like constant like, okay, it's your paycheck time. Yep, here you are, stay my girlfriend kind of thing. It's literally the real definition of simping in a
Oh yeah.
sense,
Yeah, that's a tier
and
tier
that is
4
pure
sub.
simping.
That's a tier 4 sub.
It's a tier four sub.
But
10 wishes all in one.
going off of that, I also find it curious that her work environment, because when you sign up to an app, you usually have to put in your like email address, all of these things, especially if you're going to be dating someone. I assume they have to put in their actual address just to make sure that their clientele is safe. And how they didn't put together that, hey, our top talent is living right next door to her top, donor. It's quite something.
I mean, I did see one comment where they're like, the company is just making money. Yes, but the thing is, it comes down to an issue of an ethical problem. Like, if the business knows that someone's just paying her to be his permanent girlfriend, they're probably going to start questioning it, because if by chance she does fall in love, like they might panic and think, oh, well, what if she does fall in love? I mean, point of the story, that's kind of the whole point. But then she'll end up quitting the job, which means they may lose a really good client and
Right.
a really good worker. So the business doesn't want to, and at the end of the day, yes, it's money, but she had plenty of other clients anyway, so she didn't need him. He's just a permanent client that's taken everyone else's slot. She was like a high demand piece of meat in the sense of the clients and the business.
But even through that, another big ethical violation, for example, even therapists have this, which is outside of work, we can't be interacting with their clients, like going out to go eat with them, and like there's you have to have a professional layer, because if she ends up at his house and something ends up happening, right? All of a sudden, the company's at risk in terms of like legal matters, and everyone else is just put in a weird scenario where it's like, oh crap, what do we do? Where does
Also lost
everything
money
go?
for them too, because if they're having dates outside of that period, then that's money that they could have made as well.
Right, right. That's why I'm like, I love the show just for the concepts that it brings up and the laughter that you get from being able to like point out some of these things and be like, wait a minute, if I as a therapist did this, I think I'd be instantly fired. If any professional like did this, as a doctor, as whatever, does anything like this, it's like an instant ground for fire. So yikes. Yikes. Does Japan have ethical violations like that? JP, so I'm gonna be straight up, at least in the psychological field, the Japanese Association for Psychology is much stricter than the APA. So I assume that other ethical violations might be a little bit higher.
I do find it funny because Twitter's basically been bashing on the writer now. They kind of just say the only reason why the series is still going on is because the writer has a hard on for his own character.
It might
Because
be.
he takes a lot of real life photos and then he'll draw her into it. He drew her underwear in one photo, and I'm just like, "Are you okay, bro? You want us to call you some help, bro? Like,
You good?
you've got a wife. Love your wife, bro. Don't start loving a fictional. That's our job. We're lonely. We need to create fictional characters. You got a wife. Go to her."
He's got that 5D head, man. He's like, all right, my wife isn't going to meet my desires, so. Oh, no.
I've got the main wife for the main hustle. I've got the side waifus for the side hustles.
Oh,
I'll bring
dude.
them the money and also be my pleasure.
Oh, that hurts. But anyway, I do want to go and say, SV, dude, I appreciate the living heck out of you. And like, I genuinely mean this, and any other person that I've done this with, they've always been like this. Thanks so much for coming on, but I also want to let you know, like, when it comes to any theft or anything like that, like in terms of reaching out and stuff, know that you have a friend in me. Genuinely speaking, like if you ever want to talk
I
about
appreciate that.
psychology about any character, you ever want to go in depth about anything at all, or you're having issues or you want to vent or anything like that, I'm pretty sure all the content creators before me that are Twitch streamers and stuff can like vet for that. But when I say like, dude, you reached out and like I'm saying this, I genuinely mean that. Like, you're amazing. You're an amazing individual, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a part of this, for coming on, sharing your experiences, talking anime, talking a little bit of shop, going over some hot button issues on Twitter and everything in between, dude. I am so beyond happy to have you on here. You want to shout
Oh,
yourself
happy
out
to.
and whatnot?
Um, I'm sure most know me already. If they do or don't, if they don't now, they do now. So
Right?
definitely check me out if you like that kind of content. So yeah, I mean the main channel is going a bit of a for a re-renovation just because I'm trying to do less spammy news videos and more just like wrap ups and more like topic videos. So I that's the thing I really like doing the analysis style things. That's why I like these kind of discussions because it brings out some interesting conversations, debates, and it makes you think as well. I really like being very analytical, thinking about something, being open minded, and just being like, oh, see different things for different perspectives and all the flaws of a different character and how they're written and all the rest. So it's just
So,
one of those things that I really enjoy, and I'm always happy to come on if you ever want to chat.
oh, definitely. But actually, before we go, I do have one question for you. I'm going to leave you with a deep question that I often ask all the characters. Like, I bring up different theories like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, 101 things to try and show my thought process to chat. But I'm going to leave this off as a question for you. And you can choose to not go deep or you can choose to go as deep as you want. But for you, what version of yourself caused you the most damage in terms of communication or anything wise, however you want to take this?
I said I wouldn't, but I will, just for
Okay,
this, for
fair.
context.
Sure.
It was when a man tried to murder my mother and I threw myself on him to stop her. That changed me to the core that night
Right.
because that was when I truly learnt what I was willing to do to protect those that I felt were precious to me and what I was willing to just do in general. Like I threw myself, there was no question. I was very small. That person
Right.
was 3 times my size, built like a truck, but it didn't matter. I grabbed that man's armpits and I ripped them until he grabbed me by the neck and lifted me to the roof. And that day changed me. I was a very quiet, very timid person. I would not go on. I would have never made videos, would have never been on live streams. I'd have very little social interactions, but that day changed me and made me a much more outspoken, determined, and much more willing to stand up for myself kind of person. That changed me. That day was the day I changed as a human.
Dude, that's a big one. I'm not even gonna lie. Like the moment that fight or flight comes in a big decision like this, of life or death situation, realistically, and you have to jump in and risk your life. And at that moment, let's be honest, your feet probably started moving on their own. You probably like in a second, you were probably already jumping up and doing what needed to be done. That's not an easy decision. That's not something that everyone goes through. So your experience, first off, thanks for sharing this, but also for you to evolve and to do something that big, that's a big moment, man. And I can't even understand that, like the thought process or everything that must have come through with that, like afterwards as well, because it's a lot to deal with after as well when the adrenaline comes down. But it's also like for you personally, that being the big defining moment in your communication with yourself, do you feel as though that changed you for the better?
Absolutely. I think it did definitely change me for the better. I think I was much more easier to manipulate when I was much more younger.
Hmm.
And after that, I think I learned to just stand up for myself as an individual and just be much more, like, not so much overly stubborn. I mean, yeah, I am stubborn a little bit, but I think what made it so was that I was willing to stand up for myself, even if it meant the crowd hated me. If I
Right.
felt that I truly believed in that, I wouldn't bend the knee. I would just be like, nope, this is what I believe. Because I've always been very analytical of myself, very critical of myself. And I always question myself, but I always believe to stick true to myself. Like if I believe something, I need to know why I believe that and stick to it until someone can prove to me why it's that. Not just say, you're wrong, think this, and then go, okay, well, I have to because they told me to. I'm just like, no, tell me why I need to think this way, and then I'll consider it.
Right.
And
But
that day made me was very ironclad that I had to be. I guess in a way, a lot of people like to use this like you had to be a man, but I think it applies to anyone in general, male or female. Like you need to be strong to yourself and believe in what you. The conviction, I think, is the
yeah.
best way to put it.
But my thing is, in terms of if we're to go ahead and define some moments in our life that are like big defining moments, like that genuinely like shifted us in one direction or the other, what I'm hearing from you is that this is one of those big moments where you're like, this changed the course of where I was to who I am now.
Yeah, it definitely was a very big thing. I mean, I still remember it, and it wasn't like one of those foggy memories where I was like, oh, did I really change? No, I knew because that was the day everything in my life changed and who I was, how I had to be. I felt like I had to protect, even though I was very small, frail, but I just felt like I had to be there. And I remember my mother threw me over a fence to my neighbors to try and get me away. And I was like, no, no. I was latching on. I was like, no, I'll fight that dude. I don't care the size, the power. I'll do what I need to do. I will defend. I was very, very like, sure, it was adrenaline, but
Right.
I knew what I needed to do. I was like, I will protect what I want to protect, even if it cost me my life.
Right. And and just being straight up, those primal instincts. If we're gonna be realistic about it, right? Because there's
Oh, yeah,
certain
they're definitely primal.
yeah, there's certain family members, and we don't even know what's being activated, but we're there, we're going full force, we're doing what needs to be done, and man, it's hearing this story and then hearing the ways that like you've been resilient in terms of the hate that comes sometimes from being a content creator, the
And actually,
weirdness.
remembering that situation, there
Uh
was
huh.
a second situation that was very similar to that. And I
Whoa.
almost forgot it, but it was afterwards, it was in high school,
Uh huh.
and it was New Year's night. And we were walking home from the fireworks from a park, and a bunch of, I wouldn't say they were bikies, they were wannabe bikies. And they decided to pick a fight us. They chased us down a road and they caught me and they started beating the living snot out of me. And they were like, where are your friends? Where are your friends? Where are they hiding? And I wouldn't tell them. And they were mocking me. They were saying, no, you sound like Smeagol. Ha ha ha. We're going to beat the crap out of you. We're going to stick a dog in you. I just wouldn't bend. I was like, nope, I'm going to tell you where my friends are. You can go F yourself. Like
Right.
they weren't real bikies, but they were pretending they were bikies. They're like, oh, we're bikies. We're going to beat the snot out of you. And I'm like, piss off. You're just thugs.
Right. At that point. But even then, being at the receiving end of being beat up, I'm gonna be straight up with you, right? Any point in time, and as a psychologist, I always love like throwing this out there. Any point in time that your fight or flight gets activated in a big moment like that spurs on, where your primal instincts are like you're on like alert, you're either taking hits or whatnot as a kid, bro. That's a big, huge impact in who we are as individuals because we're learning. For example, your first situation that you explained, right? Your natural instincts kicked in, and you're like, I'm gonna save my mom. I'm like, I'm gonna step up and I'm gonna save who I need to save. This is what I need to do. Second time, these people came through and they started doing what they like. You know, they were beating you up. You know, did you give up your friends? I don't think you did, right? So what does that
Yeah.
so what does that mean for you as a person? For me, what I'm hearing, right, is that you protect those that you care about. And even if it's at the risk of your life, it sounds like time and time again you've shown how loyal and how far you'd be willing to go for them to even take such damage like that to yourself, dude. That's big. And I
Yeah,
hope
yeah, I guess in a way, yeah, it is.
and I want to ask you, and like not turning this into any form of therapy or anything like that whatsoever, but just because like as I mentioned, I adore you as a person. Do you do that for yourself?
No, no, I don't think so. Well, at least looking at my past, I don't think I ever really did.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I remember when I was bullied in primary school and in high school, I always let people almost like trot over me a
Uh-huh.
lot. I think it was only after the attempted murder on my mother that I really learned to stand up for myself individually. But before that, I used to just let people walk over me. I remember getting concussions, broken nose, still have a broken nose because I had chairs slammed into my face. Like I was bullied heavily, and it
Right.
wasn't just students; it was teachers as well. And it was just I pretty much let people walk all over me.
Right.
But I'm not really sure 100% sometimes these days. I mean, I definitely am very stubborn. I stand up for myself, but I definitely feel like in the past I didn't. I did not protect myself, but when it came push come to shove, I would protect someone else.
Right. And through that, sometimes I'm straight up about it. Sometimes it's really hard to put up, especially when we're younger, put up barriers, boundaries, whatever we want to call it, with friends. Similar situations, I've had some friends walk all over me in many cases until I learned it wasn't okay to do so, right? Or
Just answer the chat. It wasn't physical hits from the teachers. It was mind games, manipulations. They would let the students get away with bullying me. They would then play the whole, well, what have you done wrong to instigate it? I remember I got slapped like 6 times on an oval just because they didn't like my face. And the teacher went, well, what did you do to instigate that? And it was just like, I was just watching them play football. And they then tried to spin it. So it wasn't physical from the teachers,
right.
it was a mental, while the students were physical and mental.
Right, and being straight up with it, like that's a moment that we discussed earlier, and that's absolutely terrible, man. It sucks that like for the adults weren't actually being caring adults in that situation. The teachers weren't actually being caring teachers,
Yeah.
man. But on a brighter side, though, I will say this: who you are today, you're a shining beacon to a lot of people, dude. And I hope you genuinely know that, like a lot of people, just like you looked up to Chibi, and like all of these wonderful content creators, you do have a lot of people who look up to you as well as an individual and as a creator. For like, first off, your videos, yeah, some of your video essays, what I like to call them, are amazing. You put in a lot of like for me personally, like hearing them. I've been hearing them in my car, and I'm like, dude, you put in a lot of work. Like that, like the way you're cranking them out, and the way that like your voice carries through everything. I'm like, it takes talent, and it takes talent to
I always try to put more effort into the analytical component rather than the editing. So I always try and make sure that like they're well thought out and always bring up discussions of different perspectives, having those like back and forth, especially with different characters that I just find fascinating, as so
right,
to say. I mean, I've remembered back in the old days when I was mainly doing overall stuff. It was like discussions between Albedo and Demiurge, and how there was like a power dynamic between them, and how they were always trying to rival each other because one was just doing it to prove that they were competent. The other one was just trying to get some snoo.
right,
So it was
right,
always like there was many different characters, and I think that's what I like about anime
right,
is that there are some really good gems out there, some really good characters, and these writers they really put their heart and soul into it. I think just with Western media, I've gotten very bored of it. Like I used to watch a lot of Western media,
right,
and it was like all kinds of like the Marvel universe, the DC universe, House, like all kinds of stuff. But a lot of it just became very boring
Uh-huh.
but also like predictable. While anime, yes, it's predictable, but I'm not bored of it. And yes, there are a lot
Right.
of shows that are very similar, but there are a lot of those shows out there that are like little gems. And I think because there's so many animes coming out every season, it gives a better chance that you'll find a little gem out there when you do find one.
So,
While Western media doesn't have as many, so there's not
uh-huh.
as many opportunities to find a gem. And there are still some good gems. Like I think The Boys is definitely something that a lot of people really love for a lot of good reasons, because that really builds a scary villain slash hero. Like he's a hero to some people, but he's a villain to others, and I think that's a good way of those gems out there. But they're very far and few.
I'm gonna be straight up. The boys, I watched it and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I would love to do like an analysis on this, but I'm also like, wait a minute. Okay, take a step back. I also want to jump into this one, and this might make you smile or laugh a little. I'm not sure, but there's two questions in this one. Number one, I like how we were like we're starting to wrap up, and then I'm like, wait a minute. I think I found one thing that like I haven't touched on that I wanted to touch on. What is your favorite tag? And I think you know what tags I'm talking about here. What is your favorite tag when it comes to just general things that pop up? We're going deep, boys. Oh, oh,
And I definitely would say ecchi. I
okay,
mean, fan service is nice. I do like my fan service just because it's just nice to turn off your brain and enjoy stuff. But I would say if we're talking tags like in anime, I do really like romances.
sure.
Really do. I love those rom coms. Maybe it's just something that I kind of like yearn for or something, but I just really enjoy those pure romances, those where it's like it feels like it's like two people falling in love, and there's no like annoying drama a lot of the times. Like it's like general pure love
Uh-huh.
between two characters. I guess I like that because as much as it can be simple, it just feels heartwarming.
I, I I'm gonna be honest. For mine, it's either gonna be etchy if we're talking about anime. For some reason, I'm gonna be straight up with you. I think I've lost my mind in terms of like I think I've ruined the experience for myself because prison school was supposed to be one thing that like is etchy and like my mind's supposed to just be like in the perverted like realm as to what these characters present. But I turned it like I analyzed episode one of prison school and it turned into like an hour and 30-minute discussion about sexology and the power of like thighs and I forgot what else we went fucking deep.
Jiggle physics.
Jiggle physics, you know. But through that, I guess, you know, and I often find conversations like this funny because everyone has a different thing that they like. For example, do you have a character that you specifically like, a character type? Mine are dark elves, man. Present me a dark elf. I'm all there, brother.
I think I've worked out what my character type is just because of all the characters that I generally like. Because Akano, Camilla,
Uh-huh.
they're very dominating
Yeah.
female characters, and I wonder if that's the thing. I like the big, busty, dominating kind of women
The Dami
that know what
mommies.
they want. Yeah, the dummy
Uh,
mummies.
oh,
I
there
don't
we
know what
go.
it is. I love them. They smother you with love.
I love that expression. They smother us with love. Oh, man, I'm so glad we found ourselves one, bro. Chat. We found ourselves one. Dami Mommy Club. Here we go. Man, with that, you're absolutely amazing, SP. I hope you know we're literally gonna keep like shouting out your channel and everything on here. Is there anything that you want to say to chat before we go?
Oh, one person in chat wanted to know where the playlist was for Jobless Reincarnation.
Hmm.
I can relink it. I'll link it in our chat just so you can, because I can't get into the Twitch chat. I think it's logged me out of Twitch.
Has it logged out of Twitch?
I have not logged into Twitch for like over like 2 years.
Bruh. Fair. Hey.
I do like my redheads, but I also do like blondes for some reason. I don't know what it is with blondes. There's a lot of good rom-coms with the blondes, like gamers, and that's a good series that I really like. You should analyze the games. Such a
Start off with
weird anime.
gamers? Hey.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically just a series of misunderstandings, and that's what I like about it too. Is because they misunderstand each other because from their perspective, they're thinking they're all cheating on each other, but when they realize, they're like, "Oh, I just misunderstood because I saw you with them and yous were close, so I thought yous were cheating." on me, and it's like, nope, they were just talking about you cheating on them, which
Oof.
you weren't doing. And so it's just like massive circle. I love that series. It's a
Dude,
good series.
that would be interesting. That would actually be really interesting to analyze as well. With that being said, chat, yo, we appreciate y'all coming in today to, especially to be here for SB. But SB, dude, I honestly like, from our little like chats and stuff, I'm like, okay, like I wonder how this is gonna go. I was a little nervous, man. I ain't gonna lie. Like I was a little nervous, like coming in, and I'm like, oh crap, what's it gonna go? But you're such a chill dude. Like you're such a legitimately chill person, and I am
I
so
think
glad.
when I did stream with Natalia, she was kind of the same. I think she was a little bit nervous, but then when push came to shove, I mean, I remember I've had like really bad debates on Twitter with
Uh
certain
huh.
people,
Uh huh.
and like we ended up like I ended up blocking them, they ended up hating me, and like a year later, we ended up on Chibi's Discord, and we just ended up in like Discord chat, and we're just like, let's just chat. And we
Yeah.
ended up becoming like good friends. And we're just like, oh, yeah, put a difference aside. And we ended up becoming friends. And it's just like one of those where it's like, I think people are very different on like how they type, say, like on Twitter or something, compared to like
In
generally
person.
talking. Perspectives can be very deceiving. Because I think Twitter's like really horrible when it comes to like how you type, because you can only put so much in a tweet.
Right.
So it removes context, it removes tone and meaning and all that kind of stuff.
But no, you're absolutely right. And honestly, that's why I'm like, I'm glad that like, I was able to bring you on. We were able to have this conversation and connect. Because at the end of the day, that's sort of what makes our experiences, man. Is like being able to connect and shoot the shit, talk a little bit, talk about like everything from etchiness to some deep stuff and everything in between. And that's why I genuinely appreciate it. Like taking that ability to come here and chat and be open with us, man. And honestly, I would love to have you back because I have a thing that I might start doing, especially with the series that you recommended for the cafe. I might start analyzing it, so I would love to have you back once it starts up and like get your 2 cents in about some characters and some stuff as it goes through. You down for that?
Absolutely. More than happy to.
Bro, I appreciate you. Chat. Hey, I'm gonna go into a quick be right back. So stay safe, guys, and I'll be right